have we got any apologies for absence?
Yes, so we had apologies from Councillor Hayden and Councillor Khan.
Thank you very much. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests. I don't think anybody been advised before the meeting. Has anybody got anything to declare? No, thank you very much. There are two exempt items on this agenda, which is agenda item 6, appendices 1 and 2 regarding active travel and zebra. Obviously, I'll warn people when we come to that item, but if anybody wants to discuss those, anything on those two appendices, we'll obviously have to stop the meeting and ask people to leave. If we can get through it without doing that, that would be great. But do let me know, obviously, in advance if you want to discuss things on that list. So we'll leave it until then. Minutes of the meeting of the Transport Committee held on 19th of September. Those are there for noting. Anybody, any comments, questions on those? No, in that case, can I propose those as a correct record of that meeting? Seconded by Councillor Carlill. Can I see all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much. That is carried. So those are a correct record of the meeting on the 19th of September. And then moving then on to the first item on the agenda, which is Passenger Experience Rail Report. So Dave Haskins, thank you.
I'm happy to pick this up, Councillor. Just to sort of start, I'll give a brief overview of the report, and I think, say, a week's a long time in politics, a week can sometimes be a long time in rail as well. And a couple of things have moved on a little bit since the report was drafted and finalised, so I'll be relying on a little bit of a verbal update on those as well. Firstly, on the rail strike set out in 2.1, a brief update on that, as I understand that RMT have put an offer to the members working for the train operating companies now. They have to the 30th of November to decide whether that will be accepted. I understand they're hoping that will be accepted. There is still talk of possible ASLEV activity or action, should I say, in the run-up to Christmas and New Year. Moving on to performance matters, we set out sort of through 2.2 all the way down probably through to 2.4 some performance figures around punctuality, where there's been a slight decline for Northern, but it's not much of a change from where it was before. There's been a significant, for Northern, and cancellations for Northern have increased substantially, while TPs have notably decreased. TPs have gone down quite a bit there. There's an Appendix 1 which sets out more detail around this, and I think at the previous meeting that information had been omitted on the view that it might have been too much information for some people, but that's gone back in because there does appear to be an appetite for the more level of detail, so we can continue to hold the operators to account on the detail of performance. Cancellations with Northern are at 5.5 at the moment, and TP about 3.4%. Excludes cancellations the evening before the P-coded, as we've heard about before. Northern had a particular peak in cancellations in the summer in July and August, but this has evened off a bit, and I'll talk about why that's been the case a bit further on in the report. Since the previous report, there's been a reduction in total cancellations overall for TPE from about 12% down to 4%, which is really good news, reflecting the full availability of rest day working in the period. We welcome this trajectory. It is still impacted, obviously, by the ASLEV action, shorter strike days, and again, we'll continue to monitor that. It's set up a bit further on the report about revised recovery plan, but it's worth mentioning here for TPE with the new leadership team, it's a temporary reduced timetable. The intention is that TPE trains will run on time and cancellations will be significantly reduced, allowing them to operate 15% more services through 2024, which is welcomed. Moving on to Northern. Northern have been struggling with some train crew resource. I do understand that this is due to sickness, driver training and other issues of staff leaving the business. I do understand that they do have enough drivers, but there is a need for them to be trained. We will be seeking reassurance for them on their staffing forward plan. But again, the good news I understand on this is that ASLEV have agreed with them the rest day working for the next 6 months, which does give them an increased ability to train drivers, and therefore from that should flow a more resilient train plan. That is the intention as set out by them. I think 2.7 through to 2.9 references, which again we haven't reported in the last few meetings, sort of Network Rail performance and how that sort of more for members' awareness, how that does contribute. It's not just the train operators that we need to hold to account here. Network Rail, there are a number of delays to operator performance during the period, trespass, vandalism, and we do of course get, even though it's been a bit of a later autumn this year, there have been delays due to leaf fall impact on the railway, of which there are mitigation measures well in train to deal with that. Moving on to the service changes, and again at the last committee we referenced that we had written to Northern and then to Rail North Partnership around the Northern cuts from the 10th of December on the Penistone line and some shortening of trains elsewhere. The responses have been received, not necessarily satisfactory, but we need to make sure that we continue to hold them to account and monitor the impact of those changes. Turning back to TPE, and this is where some of the things have moved on a little bit in the last week. In respect to their temporary reduced timetables, the service patterns have been confirmed. We previously did set out their proposals to withdraw the Nova 3 trains, and my understanding is the Rail North Committee met earlier this week and accepted an option relating to the withdrawal of the Nova fleet, subject to reassurances as set out in a letter that was sent to us from Robin Gisby. We'll continue to press TransPennine Trains to make sure we do get information on the train capacity, supply and demand from December 2023. The issues relate to whether the changes in the available capacity will lead to overcrowding and on trains. We do recognise there is overcrowding generally at times anyway, but a higher level of overcrowding. And we need to understand and monitor this as demand returns to the system, as it does continue to. So I think that's a really key point for us to be aware of here in terms of where we've got to on this particular issue. A couple more issues, themes I'll pick up on. In 213 onwards, we talk about a few of the passenger network enhancements, which are always welcomed in respect to the Northern flash sale. Certainly how Northern have also taken advantage of strike days to do deep cleaning at stations, which certainly enhances the passenger experience across the network. And TP installing new tactile maps, which is welcomed, as have been produced by a Royal National Institute of Blind People at Dewsbury and Huddersfield on our patch. The final point I'll flag is over the last few meetings we've had quite a number of discussions and heated debate, it's fair to say, around the rail ticket office closure consultation exercise, relating to how passengers buy tickets. We do recognise that there is a case for altering the way that staff presence is provided at stations, but I think we had major issues collectively here around the way that the consultation was undertaken. Through the process that went forward, Transport Focus did complete its review at the end of October, and they objected to all the current proposals to close the ticket offices, including a number of quite high-level considerations around welcome points, monitoring and review mechanisms, queue time targets, ticket vending machines, and so forth as their objection reasons. Almost hot on the heels of that announcement from Transport Focus, government through DfT did announce the withdrawal of their proposals, and the train operators have all confirmed that they will now not be taking forward these proposals. So I think from our perspective, we collectively ran a very good campaign there, plugging in our local evidence into that, which played a really key part in terms of pushing the case. So on that basis, that's the overview of the report. Maybe not as brief as I'd have liked, but it's quite a lot going on there.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, thank you to everybody who took part in the rail ticket office consultation. There was obviously this committee itself wrote a unanimous letter actually as part of that consultation to say it was completely unacceptable to close those ticket offices, and I'm very pleased that the government have sort of agreed with us on that, and that has now been stopped. It is concerning, of course, though. It was a government edicts, first of all, that forced it on the operators to say, you need to cut this money, we're going to cut it from, and that's what they suggested. I want some reassurance, really, that they're not going to cut that money from somewhere else in the operator's budget, and we'll find out that somewhere there's an unacceptable cut that we didn't know about somewhere along down the line. So, but I think, first of all, to say thank you to everybody, and that's not, it's the public have been really behind this and have really supported us in making the case that those rail ticket offices are absolutely fundamental to making sure people travel around the network safely, and indeed, to get the right information they need to get where they need to get to. So that is a bit of good news on the horizon, which we're very pleased to be able to announce. So quite a lot else in there as well. But before I go on to those other items, did everyone want to speak on the ticket office closures in particular? Anything people want to say on that? Miss Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to clarify that it wasn't just the consultation that we had issues with, it was the impact on the service that's provided to travellers that was our key concern, particularly people with disabilities. So I think that needs to be understood. It wasn't just the consultation process.
Indeed, thank you very much. Councillor Firth.
Can I just follow up your statement, Chair, about congratulating all the people involved, not just this committee and the Mayor. We were involved with the unions, we were involved with all our local authorities. We actually spread the message far and wide. Many of us did petitions, many of us handed cards out to save our local station. And I think it's an achievement, I think, that we should be proud of. We stopped them in the tracks. No pun intended. No pun intended. Well, pun intended, really.
Councillor Carlo.
Thank you, Chair. It's welcome because many of us have these ticket offices in our wards as well, and New Pudsey ticket office was one of those earmarked for closure. One of the main points that I was concerned about on that is not only the ticket office, but the toilet is obviously accessed through the ticket office and many of the other facilities such as the bus timetables and everything that lead you onto the other transport. One thing I want to be really clear on is, as well as the closure in ticket offices, there were some areas where it was proposed to reduce the hours of staffing at stations as well. I haven't ever seen whether it's completely clear that all proposals are now off, therefore the same hours and staffing levels at ticket offices and at stations will be respected in our communities, and that's something I really would like us to be clear on.
So can we get clarity on that? I think first of all about are they offering any more cuts because of this government cuts? Is there anything else they're going to cut that we don't know about? And secondly, the hours of opening. I think we should probably seek assurance on both those things for the operators. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And like everybody else, I welcome the fact that these disastrous government policies were dropped, but they should never have been there in the first place. And I think we need to put that on record. These policies should never have been brought forward. And I would actually like to know how much all of this has cost. And I think quite a lot of my residents as well would also like to know the cost of this exercise. I mean, the amount of time, the amount of money that's been spent on it, it's an appalling waste of money. And I do think there needs to be some accountability from the government and from people who supported it for that. Many of my residents were very concerned about this because it affected 2 stations in my area. So it would be interesting to hear some of the costs associated with this at some point, because I think there needs to be accountability. The other thing as well, I think there were a lot of points that came out from this. So I think particularly around some of the automated machines, which people were being told that they could use. So for example, particularly with Northern, quite often at Guiseley Station and Menston Station as well, quite often when you look at the machines are not working, or if the machines are working, they're complicated, they don't give you the cheapest fare. Things are hidden away. They're not accessible, even often for people who are quite comfortable using technology. So I think some of those points that people raised, particularly around access to cheaper fares, reliability of machines, and the ease at which people can use them, those concerns are still there. And I would like to hear from Northern and from the other operators what they're going to do to improve the quality of what's on offer.
So very good points there, Councillor Edwards. And I think this isn't one of the meetings where the operators come, is it? But actually, are they coming at the next meeting? Because we do need to sort of raise some of these points with them directly.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So let's make sure they're here to answer some of those questions. I think there's very valid points raised.
Yeah.
York.
Thanks, Chair. I think just to pick up on the points about the hours that have already been lost, I think it might be worthwhile seeing the overall numbers of staffing before and after this debacle. So there is a suspicion that some staff numbers will have already been cut during the process. So we could do with some clarity on where we are with overall staff numbers in the region. Thanks.
Yes, and I raised that actually at Rail North Committee earlier this week, that what they said at previous meetings was that they were holding back some vacancies in ticket offices pending this, and that will have had an impact. And I think that has been seen on the front line, hasn't it, for ticket office closures, short notice, etc., because of lack of staff. So we need to know how they're going to restaff those stations quite quickly now, because otherwise that's going to happen quite a lot. So I did raise that on Tuesday. Let's make sure that's in the minutes and we're getting a response to it. Lovely, thank you. So I think we do need to draft a letter, I think probably to Rail North Partnership, TFN, asking them to, obviously welcoming the news, getting clarity on the any more money coming out from anywhere else that we know about, that we should be concerned about. What about the hours, and can we get the ticket offices staffed up again? Now we've got the firm commitment that they're not going to be closed going forward. A few other things in this paper as well that our colleagues probably noted. Northern are struggling with resource at the moment, and regarding sickness, again, a question to ask them when they come next time. But hopefully they're on that now and seeing what they can do to sort of manage those sickness levels down. I don't know if officers had any feedback on what they're doing regarding that.
I've got discussion with them coming up later this week, so I'll feedback on that.
Thank you. Any more questions from the Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. Two questions, if I may, Chair. One is, congratulations to TransPennine Express for the big reduction in cancellations both on the day and the preceding day. Does that really mean that they need to reduce the timetable? Because that was largely to reduce the number of cancellations, and they seem to have achieved that by other means. The other question was about, there was an announcement that LNER would be buying a trimodal fleet of locomotives for the East Coast Main Line. Now, I thought the whole purpose of electrifying the East Coast Main Line at great expense was so that you could run lighter, more efficient electric engines that didn't have to haul around a battery and a diesel motor as well. So what is the rationale for buying a trimodal fleet for this route?
I'll come in on the first question, and the second one is probably testing my technical skills at the moment without that backup. First one, my understanding is what TP have put in place is a performance plan over a period of time to improve the situation. Things are starting to improve. I think if we were to speak to TP, they would probably say that they need to see that plan through to a point in time where things are back to the point where they can guarantee that the reliability is back in the network to a sufficient level that they'll be able to return to the timetable they wish to return beyond that point. I think it's for a maximum of a year. From my understanding, they said they wanted to do that timetable, which suggests it might be sooner if things play out right.
And we have insisted on that as Rail North Committee, actually, that they say a year, but if it's showing that they can come back sooner with services, they should do, and we'll keep monitoring that. Sam, did you want to come back?
Yeah, so just to give a little more colour to the TransPennine situation, so their issue in particular is a significant driver training backlog which, in fairness to the new management, was inherited from the previous management. They have engaged with us well so far in terms of being very open in terms of the impact of that. What we're now seeking clarity on is the levels of train capacity that we will see at each of our stations through particularly the peak hours, so that we can ensure that if passengers are having to face a reduction in timetable, that they aren't left on the platform for lack of train capacity, and that's very much the focus of the engagement at present. LNER, I don't know the full reason why. I can imagine there are certain operational flexibilities that it gives them, but we do have a session coming up, Chair, with senior management from LNER, so we can pick that up and get some clarity in terms of their approach.
Is that Strategic Rail Partnership
Yes.
meeting? Okay. Well, let's make sure that's. I was going through the agenda for that this morning, so let's make sure that that's on there. Councillor Cobain.
Oh, thanks, Chair. And just on that issue, the removal of the Nova 3s is a cause of concern for us. We understand the reasons why TPE are doing what they're doing, but the removal of the Nova 3s has a huge impact on the line between York and Scarborough. And with that service scheduled to drop down to a shuttle service once an hour, that needs to be really closely monitored, because we are concerned that if the service isn't increased by the summer, then we're going to see chaos on those lines and significant displacement of journeys onto an already bottlenecked A64. So if we can flag that up, and we'd like to see a sort of particular scrutiny of what's happening to that particular line.
Yeah, I think the question is, isn't it, if they get things improve quicker, then what can they put back first? So we could do with doing that work with them to say, look, we know you're saying a year, but actually, if you can do it sooner, what would be the first things on that list to go back in? And obviously, you identified a service there, which is sort of summer dependent as well, so there's a timing issue with that. But we need to know what the dates are when they're going to report back, I think, and say how things are going. At the moment, they're on track, because I asked them that on Tuesday, but let's see if we can go a bit above expectation and then deliver something sooner. Councillor Morley, I think I saw you indicating.
Thank you, Chair. 2.3 cancellations, the Leeds to Sheffield via Morthorpe, massive cancellations there, especially a lot more than the night before. Do we know what passenger numbers using them services are actually like? Because obviously that's got a massive impact on what is already a very isolated part of our county.
I don't suppose we have. I've got that detailed information.
We don't have the obviously not obviously, but I don't have the information to hand nor in my head. But we can try and get hold of some information for you on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Councillor Firth.
Can I just take a step back, Chair, and just touch on driver training? The blamed driver training, or shortage of drivers, for a very long time now. A very long time. Can we see an end to that? Can we see an end to when they've got enough drivers trained up? How many years will it be? How many times will we come back to listen and about this excuse? It's, you know, ad infinitum. Is there an end to it?
Is there an end to it, Sam?
So it's a 12-month plan that they've set out for both ourselves and the Rail North Partnership. I think the question that you ask around the accountability on that is something that I know, Chair, is being addressed through the Rail North Partnership. So members will be aware that TransPennine is now under the operator of last resort arrangement, which means that in effect it is directly accountable to an agency of government. And one of the aspects that we are looking to clear up within that arrangement is exactly what that accountability therefore looks like back to Rail North Partnership, which of course is a partnership between Northern authorities and government. So that is certainly our expectation, that Rail North Partnership should be kept up to speed in terms of the success of the driver training regime through next year.
It's sufficiency, isn't it? It's sickness, it's recruitment, it's retention, it's managing a workforce really, and I think those are all parts of the same discussion that we need to have with them next time really, I think, and that's all operators, but particularly in Northern at the moment they seem to be suffering a bit on that. Councillor Edwards. Sorry, Councillor Hannan.
On the issue with the LNER new stock, I understand there's 12 new trains coming in. Is it going to be in addition to the rolling stock that they've got, or is it going to be, are they going to replace some old rolling stock? I know that's over 30 years old, if that could be asked. And the trains that they're going to bring in, I think it's the new CAF model. Has that been tried and tested, and is it reliable? If that could be asked, please.
Again, that's a question I think at the Strategic Rail Partnership, just to add onto that. Whether they'll tell us all that information, I don't know, but let's ask the question. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I mean, on this issue about sickness, staff sickness, and some of the other issues, particularly with Northern, I think it would be very helpful to get a bit more detail about their conversations with the unions and with staff representatives, because certainly I hear different things about how cordial those relations are, and I think it's really important that the operators have effective communication with the unions, and so it would be very helpful if they could tell us more about that. So give them a bit of pre-notice. I will be asking them about that.
That's very decent of you, Councillor Edwards. So any more questions before we close down this item? No, I don't think so. So obviously quite a lot happening there in that update, and it will be good to have the operators here next time to answer some of those detailed questions, but we can take those up in the meantime, can't we, with the operators in our respective fora. So I think that paper was just for noting from memory. So we'll move on now then to the next one, which is the transport policy update. And again, this is the item that has two appendix which are in confidence, and therefore we need to be mindful. If you do need to refer to anything in exempt item appendix 1 or appendix 2, can you please let me know now? Does anybody think they might have to raise a question about the detail of those at the moment? No, in which case I won't make this a private item. We'll discuss this. If you do need to discuss anything in those items, in those appendices, please stop yourself talking and put your hand up and let me know before you say anything. That'd be really good. So, transport policy update. Helen.
Thank you. We'll whip through each item in turn, but obviously there's a range of things in here. So the first part of here is the Active Travel Fund 4 extension, which does have the private appendix. This one is just setting out that we are currently in the process of bidding for the next round of Active Travel Fund money. The bid is broadly focusing on areas that were unfunded last time, and we are in the process of developing that bid. Submission is the 27th of November. We have been through a design workshop with Active Travel England, and that process was successful, and we got the costings developed around that as well. So the recommendation here, which I noted isn't actually in the paper, but the recommendation is that the final decision and submission of the bid is delegated to you, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
So is that have you changed the recommendations on this paper?
It will need changing in this paper.
So whilst you're talking then, let's Ian or somebody just to draft what that looks like. Thank you.
If that one's okay, I'll go on to the next one. So the second item, which has an exec appendix, is the zero emission bus bid. We are currently in the process of bidding for the second round of zero emission bus funding. This is a further £129 million for electric and other fuels such as hydrogen buses for across the country. Given we've been given zero emission bus round 1 funding, which we're currently in the process of delivering, DfT have said that we are probably less likely to be successful with this round, but nevertheless it would be good for us to be going for it. So that's where we currently are. The bid is due for submission on the 15th of December, and the bid has to come forward in partnership with operators because they provide the match funding for the diesel buses. So again, our submission on this, the recommendation here should be that we are submitting in consultation with you as the chair, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Okay, thank you very much. So there's two recommendations added there that it's obviously we note the updates provided in this report, but then members delegate to the chair and I would say deputy chair actually as well to make the final decision on the submission, and that's both on the Active Travel England submission and also on the Zebra submission, which actually has to go from operators anyway, doesn't it? It's not come from us, does it?
It comes from us
Oh,
as a
does it come from
submission,
us?
but
Okay.
it has to have a strong, all the content of the bid, shall I say, is essentially from the operators.
Okay, lovely, thank you very much. So I've got Councillor Firth and I've got Councillor
Thank you, Chair. In the Zebra 2 submission, note there's two glaring omissions in there. Calderdale,
Are you talking about the appendix?
no, I'm talking about on the paper
Just
here.
checking, just checking.
Glaring omissions there, Kirklees and Calderdale are not included in the bid. Why?
This is because it's coming from Wycombe, isn't it? This. Go on.
So, because the bids are developed in partnership with the bus operators, the bus operators have to have a business case for the funding to come forward in specific areas. In Zebra 1, we match funded that bid with our City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement funding to look specifically at putting some electric buses into Calderdale and Kirklees through that mechanism to supplement what we were doing with the operators. This time round, obviously, we're in a further bidding round and are still in the process of delivering the initial funding. So currently, no additional match has been put for any capital programmes towards that.
Thank you. Councillor Patient.
Thank you, Chair. Part of it's been preempted there. Frustrating to see the plan for drivers sort of bit mentioned within there. It's going to prove probably a little bit difficult for us to enforce bus priority messages. I think there's a real clash of sort of worlds there within there, so that is disappointing to see, but I appreciate you need to reference it because it is emerging policy. Another thing as well, electrification of the Calder Valley line, it feels like a sort of big omission as well, and for me that is part of upgrading and would be a first choice route for any way forward towards Bradford as well, which we know is looking towards renewal of station and routes and stuff. So also a bit of an omission was the Castlefield corridor in Manchester, which would be sort of great benefit for Calderdale as well in terms of link throughs. So really good report, sorry, just pointing out some bits and frustrations, but they're not all from your world, some of them are national movement.
So I think Councillor Patient's articulating some frustrations with the government there.
Indeed.
Which obviously are frustrating from time to time. But obviously we've got in there what came out of the new announcements, as you say, and there was some good news in there for the region as well, which I think you're pushing ahead on, Simon. Do you want to go on that?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair. So I completely agree with Councillor Patient, and a conversation that we've already started with DFT colleagues is the importance of ensuring that the final settlement around the Network North policy framework can bring forward a network proposition and not just individual elements, and we'll continue to work hard on that, and in particular the issue around the continued development of the Calder Valley corridor is particularly important in that regard. Nonetheless, we do very much welcome the clear identification now of Bradford on a future Northern Powerhouse rail network, and actually, Chair, as you're aware, we have seen some very proactive activity already from both Network Rail and DFT to work with us on that, which is incredibly important for us in the context of the other very positive announcement, which was the continued support for the West Yorkshire Mass Transit Programme, which we want to be able to land at the new station in Bradford, which of course brings us back to the importance of this being brought forward as a network proposition. So some very positive statements in terms of some of our key priorities, and the importance now is to make sure that those that weren't in the headlines are not lost as we move forward. Quite right, Councillor.
I've got Councillor Hutchinson and Councillor Morley.
Thank you. I echo what Councillor Patient has said about the need to actually keep the pressure on to emphasise the value of electrification of the Calder Valley line. I did want to also be sure that the proposed new station at Bradford wouldn't be simply for Northern Powerhouse Rail, but would also serve the Calder Valley line. But my question about the active travel fund, the most used form of active transport that's most inclusive is pedestrian transport. And yet most of the thrust of active travel funding seems to be on cycling. There is nowhere any mention of the actual cost of maintaining footways, which are in a terrible state in many, many places. And if we're wanting to encourage more people to actually go by foot for short journeys, which is the main cause of carbon emissions from transport, we need to make sure that it's enjoyable and safe for them to do so. And I've seen nothing in the proposals that have been coming forward or being discussed that would actually improve the maintenance of footways. I'd welcome any comments on that and how that might be addressed.
Footways?
Would like me to? So, I think it's a very fair challenge, Councillor. The work that colleagues have undertaken is, of course, as ever, guided by the guidance associated with the particular funding competition. I think we're confident in our advice to you that the proposals that we've set out fit best in the context of the funding competition and what we are seeking to achieve, certainly on part of our transport strategy. There were statements made within Network North around an improved highways maintenance regime. We await clarity from DFT in terms of how that looks. And of course, in many ways, the point that you make actually comes back to the fundamental debate that we're having with government at the moment around the nature of devolution. And the more that we can move away from ring-fenced funding competitions against which we then need to fit our priorities, the more that we can blend our funding across each of these needs. It's a very good point.
Thank you. And of course, the Bradford option will improve things massively for Calderdale. We should have to go in and then reverse out. So that will help all of us, no matter where we are in West Yorkshire. I've got Councillor Moore, then I've got Councillor Carlow.
Thank you, Chair. Back to the Network North document, the bullet point 2.10 regarding the 460 million to ensure delivery of 21 road schemes in the north. How will we as a combined authority start to look at prioritising what schemes we would like to submit and see come forward? I'm sure you're thinking what's on our mind in Wakefield.
So again, one of those aspects that we haven't yet got clarity from government in terms of the process that will follow, albeit that I know, Chair, you were somewhat surprised yourself because certain road schemes were named.
Yes.
Within the document without much prior discussion with local highway authorities. So I think it's probably most diplomatic for me to describe that as a work in progress element of Network North at this stage.
But obviously, we need to make our own weather on this as well. So we need to push forward on the things that we know we need as a region. And therefore, development work doesn't stop, I think, I would suggest. It's important that we have shovel-ready schemes ready to go, no matter what happens and what funding streams come forward in the future. We have to be ready and able and willing. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. It just combines a point I wanted to make about the Active Travel Fund with the point Simon made there, because the one thing that people will see on this is this was labelled as Active Travel Fund for extension. What we were expecting now was Active Travel Fund 5, which I believe the sum that's been given out is around a quarter of what I would have expected. One, I just wondered whether this was obviously the original 2 billion that was announced by government, well, by three previous governments ago at one time. Do we know how far we are into that 2 billion is the first question. Second question is, are we expecting the further to come? So are we expecting Active Travel Fund 5, which will be the proper amount in it? And this does come back to what you were saying around the bids, really, and the devolution. Had we been given our allocation of that 2 billion over a series of years, we could have been planning these schemes and developing them all and delivering them by now. Unfortunately, by the time we've got through 2 tranches, we have then been told that the money has been quartered from what it was expected to be, and the certain schemes we've chosen are to fit, as we've noted before, not necessarily with leaders' priorities for their areas, but based on the priorities we've been given. I think that is a real risk of this, because suddenly half of that money has been taken away, and I don't expect us to see it again. And we are ending up bidding for schemes that aren't the ones that our areas think are the best schemes to improve cycling and walking in their ward, in their district, sorry. So I think that's a real risk. I think there would be a good point at which, if we can get that summary around the 2 billion, that we perhaps write to get some certainty for the projects ahead, because either we are going to be able to fund the schemes that we want, or we're not. And I would rather there be an announcement that this has been dropped, so we know to put those into other funding bids where we need to.
Yeah. Are we having regular meetings with ATE as well, are we? Helen, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, we are having regular meetings with ATE and we can ask them those questions. Just on Active Travel Fund 5, we're expecting some information in the new year about timescales and therefore, I imagine, amount of money available as well.
And I was just going to add, Chair, that I think Active Travelling would welcome the support that Councillor Carlin just set out. So perhaps we can draft a letter for yourself to Chris Boardman, the chair of Active Travelling.
We've written to them before. We're happy to write to them again. Any further comments, questions on this item? Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on the cancellation of HS2 and the fallout therefrom. It was a matter of much comedy that a lot of the schemes that the government said that money was going to be spent on instead are either already been announced or have indeed already been completed. So how can we be sure that the money they say is being reallocated isn't actually a sneaky cut to investment in the north? And also, I understand the list that we've got here is an indicative list, and therefore, on behalf of sort of Kirklees, can I champion the Penistone line as a potential priority for the combined authority, because it's bad enough already and it desperately needs that investment. Thank you, Chair.
You're pleased to know, Councillor McLaughlin, that Councillor Firth has already championed the Penistone line this morning, in fact, in another meeting I was in. So you're both on the same page on that one. I think we don't know, do we? We live in a very uncertain world, and obviously we know we're going to have a general election in the next year. However, I firmly believe that we can't just tread water. We have to keep going, and we have got positive decisions on some schemes. We need to push forward with those, which some of these schemes are what we would want it to do anyway. So we push forward on those, we develop those, but we also keep developing our other schemes respectively across the region, because actually they may be more favourable in the future with different funding regimes and different policymakers. So I'm not somebody who stands still. We just need to keep going and make our own weather to make sure that we push forward economic growth in this region, no matter what government is in power when. So any further comments on that?
I suppose just the observation that we got the autumn statement next week, so that will include an updated budget statement department by department. I think that's probably the point at which we can look at the numbers that are set out and see if they reconcile back, and also to note that we are working with colleagues in South Yorkshire to review the case for the Penistone line.
We're all expecting quite a lot from the autumn statement, actually, aren't we? All local authorities are on the table. Fingers crossed for that. So any more comments, questions on this item? Helen, Dave, you wanted to say something?
Not just quite covered the BSIP Mayor's Fairs
Yes, of
item
course.
there, which I'm happy to give a
No,
very brief,
absolutely.
very
So
brief overview of that.
that means we're going to be able to continue the £2 fares, doesn't it?
Yes, essentially. On the hot on the heels, what we just talked about, the Network North announcements recently there. There was a further tranche of BSIP funding of 150 million nationally, which was announced at the same time, of which we have been notified that West Yorkshire has been allocated 13.3 million pounds of that. So that funding will be added to the current BSIP programme. That ties in with the work around Mayor's Fairs, which is ongoing, where £34 million was allocated just over a year or more ago, with the intention to support lower fares. And that was to address the cost of travel under the cost of living crisis and actually incentive for further bus travel. Now, subsequent to the BSIP announcement I just mentioned there, a national £2 fare cap was announced to be continued through to December 2024, which the Combined Authority weren't part of this national initiative because we had already set out our own stall through the Mayor's Fairs scheme, of course. So that works in a slightly different way to the way our scheme works. Now, there's some information in the report around how the performance of Mayor's Fairs has been, and we'll be bringing further information forward in the next report around, we've done some updated analysis and research around that to set out the benefits in terms of additional patronage that's been generated and information about the types of users who have been using the scheme as well. Now, the customers' savings from the Mayor's Fairs scheme have been funded through the BSIP, as I've said, and that was about £15 million in year one. We're currently working through what we call the year two payments, and we're sitting this alongside now the BSIP funding that's just come through from government. Obviously, we're not part of this national £2 fare cap, but we need to understand what will happen. The government fare cap runs them through until December 2024. We need to understand the government's thinking around the longevity of this fare cap scheme and also how that sits alongside the longevity of our BSIP funding on Mayor's Fairs scheme as well. And that BSIP funding of 13.3 million, we're deciding how that is best to be utilised, whether to support Mayor's Fairs in some way or in also looking at through service enhancements on the network. So work is ongoing on that, which we'll be reporting through.
Thank you. So this is confusing, isn't it, to the travelling public as well, because they hear an announcement at national level about the £2 fare cap is going to be continued, but actually that doesn't apply to West Yorkshire. It was a mayoral decision to do that. And obviously has been very successful here. In fact, I think the mayor did that before other authorities did that. So it was our idea in the first place. But it's good to have this money in the hope that we can continue that going forward, because it would be a shame to be out of step with the national scheme. And we hear here, obviously, it's been very beneficial. Was it £11 million it saved our travelling public, regardless of any uplift in passenger numbers? So we do want to continue this. I mean, how certain is it that we'll be able to continue it for December 24 without compromising the original BSIP settlement, I have to say, because what I don't want is the BSIP money that was set aside for additional services, which we all know we need, is going to be compromised to keep this going. So that's the question, really.
So I think we recognise, Chair, that we need to be able to maintain the fares regime. There's some urgent work that's underway at the moment between colleagues who are sitting around the table to reconcile those figures then against our overall BSIP profile, and we want in the coming weeks to be able to bring that back very clearly so that once and for all we've addressed that concern which you rightly raised.
Well, look forward to seeing that then. Obviously, buses are such a fundamental part of our economy, getting people to work, study, leisure, that we need to do everything we can to continue that scheme whilst not compromising additional services. Any more questions or comments on this item then? No? Lovely. Well, in that case, I refer you to the recommendations, but also remind you we've added two further recommendations, 10.1, which is that members here delegate to the chair and the relevant deputy chair to make the final decision about the submission on the Active Travel England bid and also on the Zebra 2 bid. So that's two additional recommendations there. I'm happy to propose that. Can I see a seconder, Councillor Carlisle? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that is carried. Thank you very much for that. So moving now then on to the next item on the agenda, which is around the West Yorkshire Local Transport Plan, which I believe we're being asked to approve in principle.
Yes, I'll take this item, Chair. So, as the report sets out, the combined authority's got a statutory duty to prepare and review a local transport plan, and it is very much viewed by government as the principal transport policy document for the West Yorkshire area. Our last local transport plan was adopted in August 2017. And quite a lot has changed since then, Chair, including clearly our work on the bus reform agenda, our very clear way forward now in terms of the mass transit programme, and indeed the establishment of the wider city region sustainable transport settlement regime, the implications of the integrated rail plan and now Network North, progression of the active travel agenda, and of course the establishment of the West Yorkshire plan. So it's absolutely appropriate, we advise, for us to set out our forward agenda in a new local transport plan, and actually will give us the basis to set out that future investment portfolio that we just touched on before. The report sets out a draft roadmap for the preparation of a local transport plan at paragraph 2.11, and that sets out how we would go about developing, consulting, and then ultimately bringing forward for adoption in mid-2025. That timing, we would suggest, is then well placed both to represent where we find ourselves on the other side of the conclusion of considerations around bus reform, and also well in advance of the next government spending period and the next City Region Sustainable Transport Fund spending period in particular. We're keen in particular to ensure that this is a comprehensive plan for West Yorkshire. We want to make sure that it genuinely represents all of the economic, social and environmental priorities, and therefore from that the transport priorities for all parts of the conurbation. And we see that as a great opportunity to strengthen, in the eyes of government and the public, the unity of purpose that we're establishing around our integrated transport agenda. And so, in particular, we are proposing a very strong co-development process with our colleagues in each of the 5 authorities, so that we can say with confidence that as a result of the process, we have a plan that genuinely represents the whole of West Yorkshire. So on that basis, we recommend that members firstly approve the proposal to develop a new local transport plan. If so, to endorse the principle of co-development, as I just touched on, and to request that we bring an update on progress in spring of next year.
Thank you very much. Certainly it's badly needed, I think, this local transport plan, isn't it? And as you say, it's a while since we did one. I think also we need to do quite a lot of work with all the authorities, with probably the exception of Leeds, actually, because the LTIP programme has got you a bit further ahead in Leeds in terms of having the modelling done and everything.
Yeah.
So have you made sure that we've got some work going on the other authorities to get us up to where Leeds are at, so that we can all move forward together with the local transport plan?
Yeah, so we've just recently done some work prompted actually by the mass transit programme development in particular, to set out a programme to fundamentally refresh the strategic transport modelling tools that we have available in West Yorkshire. We have a set of tools that are that serve the purpose very well when we are looking at the impact of very specific local interventions, but we now need to be able to consider the impact at a full system and network level, and that's the capability that we are putting in place in support of the mass transit development, and that will then stand us in good stead through this LTP process.
Lovely. So you'll be coming back here in spring 24 to report back on progress. Hopefully there'll be lots of progress made. Any more questions or comments before we go to recommendations? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Chair. And at 2.6 on this item, it mentions to have a strong, accessible transport system and reliable and affordable buses. And the Transport Levy Fund, worth £50 million, which the Mayor had from the government, she's now given this back to the constituent councils, including, for instance, 17.6 million given back to Leeds. It's obviously not wanted. So why on earth, given these priorities which we have with the trains, the buses and everything else, in this item in particular, why hasn't this fund been used for this purpose?
So I'll come back on that, Councillor Buckley. So it won't have gone unnoticed for a Conservative colleague, surely, that all local authorities are really, really financially challenged at the moment. And that it is in the West Yorkshire Combined Authority's best interest to make sure that all our local authorities keep delivering at local level. It is appalling that the government have not funded local authorities to deliver their core services, and we've been cut for the last 13 years with demand rising. That is an unsustainable position. So everybody is doing their best as Team West Yorkshire to keep the wheels on the bus and keep things moving forward. But it does require a partnership as solid as we've got in West Yorkshire to make sure that happens. And that decision that the Mayor and the other leaders have taken was all part of making sure that happens in the future. So we have a very comprehensive delivery programme of £600 million worth of transport programmes going forward, and that will continue to be delivered at pace. And of course, a lot of this money we're talking about is money that needed to revenue support, that's needed year in, year out. Not capital, it's revenue we're short of. We're all short of revenue. So we need more revenue going into our public services, whether that's transport, whether that's local authorities, whether that's the police, and that has just not happened. And I'm afraid you're on a weak ground talking about the fact that, you know, we're all stretched financially, because that is active government decisions on running down public services and cannot be allowed to continue. So I'm not sure officers can add anything to that, but did you want to come back on that at all?
She mentioned keeping the wheels on the bus. Well, she hasn't done, because this was the Transport Levy Fund, specifically for that purpose. And to give it back to the councils is surely wrong when all these priorities are here. And to talk about giving it back to the councils because they need money for this, that and the other, this was a transport fund.
I think you're misinformed there, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Simon.
Just to inform the committee in terms of the specific nature of the funding that was involved, the local authorities, as part of the overall capital investment arrangements in West Yorkshire, had started to establish a specific capital reserve. That reserve is not required to be called on at this moment in time in order to be able to support the capital programme because of the success that we've had in terms of being able to attract capital funds into our programme. It was specifically set aside for spending on capital items, and therefore was not available to the Combined Authority to use against revenue items. And it was on that basis that the discussion took place on the advice of all of the Chief Finance Officers in the conurbation.
Thank you. So, any further questions? Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like a little bit more detail about what is meant by partners in development of the plan, as to who exactly are these partners. Is it officers in strategic infrastructure and transportation, or is it more wide than that? Does it involve commercial partners or other organisations? So, you know, exactly who will we be co-developing this with?
So first and foremost, this will be a statutory plan for West Yorkshire, and our as combined authority officials, our first and priority set of partners are our colleagues in the local authorities. We do have well established arrangements in place that are overseen by the Chief Executives Group, but supervised in particular through the Directors of Development and the Chief Highways Officers. And what we will be doing is looking to make sure that we have all of the necessary supporting arrangements in place around that core structure, so that we can have the strongest unified plan. Beyond that, as is the nature in any large city region, there are a series of wider partners that we will be wanting to influence through the strength of our plan, whether that's around the rail industry, the bus industry, or the various national agencies that work around Department for Transport. So I suppose the very simple answer to you, Councillor, is anybody who helps us to get the job done.
We're a friendly bunch. Councillor McLaughlin, would you indicate it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to fundamentally disagree with Councillor Buckley, that I welcome Tracy's creative teamwork, which is what it was, as head of Team West Yorkshire, to support local authorities. And it's not money to fund this, that and the other. It's money to fund vital public services that our residents depend on. And we wouldn't need to do these kind of things if the government properly and fairly funded northern councils. In Kirklees, it's something like £69 per head times 440,000 population that we're underfunded compared to better supported councils in the south. And I think I want to personally extend my thanks to the Mayor for this support, which is vitally needed at this time of great distress.
Thank you very much, Councillor McLaughlin. So, any more comments? Councillor Morley, sorry.
Just two comments, Chair. Firstly, appreciate the West Yorkshire local plans moving forward, but the speed that we can get it done be the better. Obviously, our local plans need to hinge off that, and I know it's something in Wakefield it's holding up to an extent, but yeah, thank you for moving that forward. And just for Councillor Buckley, my God, for the fact that we've had £200 million taken off our revenue budget in Wakefield, and you're criticising putting some extra money in that, it's absolutely horrendous with the comment you've made. I must have to say that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I was prompted actually by Councillor Buckley's comment. We had this discussion yesterday within the chamber, and the thing that you mentioned yesterday twice, which you haven't mentioned this morning, you made a big thing about there is no money left. Well, if we're going to score points on this, who's been in government for the last 13 years? Whose responsibility is that? I mean, that was something that you said in the chamber twice. Yes, sir, and I think it's a pretty damning indictment. And the fact that we've not had very much guidance from the government nationally, actually this is a very serious issue on a whole load of policy areas. This is not policy point scoring. This is real life. This is impacting on our residents, and it's a question of priorities. So there is no money left. Whose responsibility is that?
I'd take that as a rhetorical question. Thank you very much. I mean, certainly we do need, at this time, a severe financial challenge. We need all colleagues from whatever parties to stand up and back for us in Westminster. And this is about keeping services going for the travelling public, but also for adult services, for children's services, all things that I know councillors around this table will be very much concerned about, and making sure we look after our most vulnerable residents, as well as keep our economies going. So it is great that we've got West Yorkshire Combined Authority and we've got a devolution deal, because we can carry on doing these fantastic growth schemes like West Yorkshire Mass Transit, like the buses, like the big rail schemes and active travel and walking schemes that we've got going. Without devolution, we wouldn't be able to do that. I dread to think what we would be actually without devolution and without mayoral combined authority. So it is great that we've got that as a piece of optimism, because we're also about powering forward our economy, as well as keeping public services going. So thank you everybody for that item. If there's no further questions or comments on that, I can't see anybody indicating, we'll go to recommendations, which is 10.1 to 10.3. Obviously, you're going to come back to us in spring 24.
Yes.
You've heard today that we do want this work to progress at pace.
Yes.
And make sure that all the authorities have their transport modelling in place, etc., to make sure we have good decisions to make next year. So I'm happy to propose that. Can I see Councillor Carlill? Thank you. Second for that. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. So next item on the agenda is a project approvals, I believe, and there are 2 project approvals on this list. Melanie? 3, sorry.
Yeah, there's 3 projects for consideration today, and Simon is going to take us through the first one briefly. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm just going to quickly run through in a couple of minutes just a quick overview of the Transforming Cities Fund's A64 scheme, which is a bus walking and cycling scheme here in Leeds. It's aiming to improve bus journey times and reliability for services along the A64 between the city centre at Marsh Lane and the approach to the Outer Ring Road. The scheme has a benefit cost ratio of 7.9 to 1, classifying this scheme as a very high value for money when assessed against the Department for Transport's value for money criteria. The scheme consists of a package of new bus lanes, extensions to existing bus lanes, upgrading existing signalised junctions to give bus priority, and improvements to existing cycling and pedestrian crossing provision for enhanced safety. Really quickly, this includes over 1,000 metres of new and extended inbound bus lanes, up to 25 real-time passenger information screens along the route, new signalisation, including pedestrian and cycle crossings, to the new old York Road junction, which is the one at Farm Foods. Upgrades of traffic signals at the Crossgates Road, Killingbeck Drive, and Selby Road junctions. And also there's new pedestrian crossing infrastructure at 3 junctions at Crossgates Road, Killingbeck Drive and Selby Road. Ultimately, the scheme is aiming to improve bus journey time reliability, a 10% increase in bus users by August 2028, a 10% modal shift from trips made by car to sustainable options by August 2028, and a 10% reduction in accidents involving pedestrians and cyclists on the A64, as well as looking to improve air quality. The current total forecast cost for the scheme is £5,020,000, which is affordable within the Transforming Cities Funds programme. The combined authorities' contribution is 4.98 million, with the remainder 40,000 coming from a contribution from Leeds City Council. So, Transport Committee today, I'm looking for approval for the A64 bus walking and cycling scheme to proceed through decision point 3, which is outline business case, and for work to commence on activity 4, which is the full business case. An indicative approval to the combined authorities contribution of 4.98 million, and for development costs of 561,000 are approved in order for us to progress the scheme up to decision point 4, which is full business case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions about this item? No. Excellent. In that case, we'll move on to the next one, and we'll take them all as a suite of things to approve.
Yeah, Chair, the next scheme is in Elland, Calderdale, and there are 2 elements to the scheme. There's the building, the development and the building of the new rail station, and there's also the accessibility package in order to make it easier for people to get to the new station. So we've got Tom and Royston that are going to do a bit of double act in terms of briefly introducing this one.
Thank you, Royston. Thank you, Melanie. So as Melanie's outlined, the combined authority are leading on the development and delivery of the rail station element, with Calderdale Council leading on the access package. The station is currently proposed as 2 platforms, lifts, stairs and step-free access to the platforms in the form of ramps, ticket machines, wayfinding, cycle storage, a ground level car park, EV charging points and provision for future installation as well. The access package supports the construction and operation of the station through improvements to the wider cycle network, 2 new pedestrian and cycle bridges crossing both the River Calder and the Calder-Hebble navigation, and further improvements to existing pedestrian and cycle routes and public realm enhancements in Elland. The schemes aim to boost rail users to the market, improve access to local labour sites, help reduce congestion and improve air quality in the Elland area and wider Calderdale. They'll also support planned housing developments in the nearby area, as well as improving greater connectivity for employment, education, leisure and social mobility. The joint scheme cost is currently estimated at £31,327,000, which is funded through a combination of the West Yorkshire Transport Fund and, in the case of the access package element, the Transforming Cities Fund. The current benefit cost ratio for the scheme is 1.31. The rail station, in terms of where we are today, has secured GRIP 4, which is the Governance for Rail Investment Project standard, and a joint OBC was previously approved in 2019. The request today is for a further drawdown of 3.329,544 million from within the existing total approval, constituting early drawdown for further development costs needed to take the project to FBC submission. Doing so would take the total development funding to 7,193,544,000, and also look to extend the delivery time scale by 12 months to September 2026. The approval sought is within the existing indicative funding approval. As mentioned, the total value for the scheme again is £31,327,414. That is all combined authority funding, and in summary, the funding recommendation sought today is £3,329,554.
Thank you. Royston, did you want to say anything? Or
Just to add to that, really. Obviously, we've obviously secured planning as well, so the scheme has got planning permission as well, or deemed planning. Well, I don't think there's much else to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? Councillor Hutchinson.
I welcome the bringing together of the access package with the station development, because the two are interlinked, and I don't think they've always been closely taken in synchrony. You can't really have one without the other, so I do welcome that. Given that Elland is within the 20% most deprived areas of the country, so the improvement of the access for business development in that area is really crucial. So I would strongly hope that this committee will approve the extension.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point. I didn't really get a sense of it in the report. Can I ask officers what the principal driver of the extension of the timescale is, please?
Yeah, obviously due to complex CPO issues, so unfortunately both projects have had to go through CPO, and they are still doing it at the moment, so that's quite a complex issue. In the previous development, there was a new British standard introduced, 992, which was fire infrastructure. So we had to add to the design, hence the ramps now. So it's just a combination of various things, and obviously statutory objections to both the CPO and the planning.
Thank you very much. Any more comments, questions? Councillor Patient.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be brief, Elland has waited a long time for this station. You know, probably getting for about 15, 20 years maybe. So although the delay is unfortunate, I think the people of Elland can be patient. You know, and we can all be patient and make sure that what's delivered is something that works properly, and hopefully utilise that time best to make sure that the active mode links within the station and to the wider area are done in the best, most sort of structured and functional way possible. So yeah, just to add that, thank you.
Good. It's good to see money being drawn down for it and progressing in the meantime. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify one point for the committee, both halves of the project have previously secured planning approval. The rail station more recently, the access package approval is historic, so there is a current new planning application currently under consideration to address those timescales and ensure we're fully compliant with both the appraisal process and our requirements around the CPO process.
And that will obviously be determined elsewhere, so other than this committee. Thank you very much. So that no more further questions on that one. Moving on to the final one then, which is the A629.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this one is the A629 is a priority corridor for us between Huddersfield and Halifax. We split the corridor into a number of phases for our delivery programme, and this is phase 1B, and Melissa is going to give us the overview of this one. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, so phase 1B is located within the River Calder Valley, and the scheme is currently in delivery. It directly complements phase 1A by building on the revised highway network and sustainable transport measures already in place. It's primarily delivering interventions to reduce congestion at the Calder and Hebble junction and reduce journey times for cars and buses, and this is going to be achieved through a new highway link between the B6112 Stainland Road and the A629, the closure to the existing A6026 Wakefield Road link between the A629 Huddersfield Road and the B611 Stainland Road, and through highway enhancements such as increasing the number of lanes, the widening of carriageways and signalised junction improvements. In terms of the impact, the scheme is anticipated to reduce journey times on the A629 over the length of the phase 1A and 1B sections for general traffic during peak periods by 25% within the 2 years of opening. It's also going to support an improvement in journey reliability and connectivity to employment, housing, education and retail along the Halifax to Huddersfield corridor, and to support an overall A629 programme net decrease in carbon emissions. The Combined Authority is fully funding the scheme from the West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund. Previous approved costs were 36.319 million, and the decision sought from the Transport Committee today is to increase the Combined Authority's contribution by 6 million to 42.619 and to extend the delivery timescale to July 2024. The release of the 6 million of the additional funding would be as follows: an additional 4.2 for delivery costs, that's mainly due to unforeseen circumstances, and 1.8 to support risk costs released on the condition the scheme promoter notifies the Combined Authority of the occurrence of a risk event. The approval to release the funding is delegated to the Director of Transport and Delivery, and the Combined Authority enters into an addendum to the existing funding agreement with Calderdale Council for expenditure of up to 42.619 million. Future approvals are made in accordance with the assurance pathway and approval route outlined in the papers, and to note the approval being sought is within the existing tolerance of the Combined Authority's approval from the 8th of December 2022, and there is order provision for the extra money in the West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions on this one? No, Councillor Hutchinson?
I would just note that one of the major contributors to the extended timescale and the costs is Northern Gas Network. This is a very congested corridor into the town, and the main high pressure gas main strategic goes right through the work site, and Northern Gas Network have rather belatedly decided that they want to replace that, which is the main factor as far as I am aware. So unfortunately, that's an important part of national infrastructure and needs to be accommodated. But I hope the funding will be agreed to allow that to take place, even if belatedly.
Thank you. I think that wasn't a question, was it, Councillor Hutchin? I don't think.
No, not really.
Just checking. Just checking. Right, lovely. In that case, let's move to the approvals, which is first of all the A64 bus walking and cycling corridor improvements. I'm happy to recommend that for approval. Councillor Carlow will second that. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. Secondly, Elland Rail Station access and Elland Rail Station and access package. I again am happy to recommend that for approval. And Councillor Firth, you can recommend that. Second that this time. Thank you very much. Can I see all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. And then finally, the A629 Phase 1B Calderdale Link Road there. I'm happy to recommend that for approval. Councillor Firth, I think, can second that. And all those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. And then also on this paper, you've got, for noting only, decisions made at the Combined Authority meeting previously, which were approvals which would normally have gone to our area, and that brings the meeting to a close. Can I just say before we close that it is Ian Parr's last meeting with us today. In fact, it is his last day in the Combined Authority. He's been attracted by the bright lights of Bradford, and he's going to go and work for Bradford University. So we all regret that he's going, because he's been very efficient and he's got us all sorted and kept us on track. So thank you very much, Ian, for all your hard work, and good luck for the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, everybody. Have a good weekend when you get there.
Excellent.